Hi, everyone. Today I wanted to share some data with you that was made available by PitchBook. There's a lot of talks about Europe and United States and tariff wars, and some people say that Europe is going to get advanced, and some people say that US is going to get advanced. I even heard stories that some folks are selling their portfolios and moving everything into European stocks and so forth. Now, let's have a look on real data, real statistics on what's going on in terms of private equity. And of course, there is a connection between public equity and private equity, because public equity is kind of tip of the iceberg, and a lot of public equity companies, of course, interacting with companies that are essentially private equity companies that are not traded on stock exchange. So what we have here is the chart that shows us European private equity deal activity from 2020 to 2025. And as you can see here, that number of transactions picked in 2022. Let me highlight this period of time. So we have it here that in 2022, that was peak of transactions in private equity in Europe. And I remember back then, there was a significant decline in mergers and acquisition activities. I think it was at least 30%, and it was shocking the industry, specifically among companies like PwC, Deloitte, and all these other companies that are doing M&A transactions. It was like, whoa, what's going on? So this is the year, and we see that it kind of peaked, and then we see decline. KKR, they started first, so their amount of transactions started to decline. Same for Apollo. Then there is, again, a little bit of spike here that in 2024, they're kind of recovering a little bit. And in 2025, of course, it's not the end of the year, so it's probably going to stay flat. But so far, if we look at the data, so PitchBook is a platform where all this data is recorded for private equity funds. So first half of 2025, KKR, Carlyle, Blackstone, and Apollo have invested 7.5 billion across 55 deals. So if trend continues, we're going to have all of them together about 110 deals. So I think if we look at this chart, so we definitely have twice as much in 2022 and 2023 transactions. And in 2025, we probably continue to see this kind of, let me draw it here, we probably continue to see that flat trend of private equity investment activity by US companies in Europe. So of course, trade wars will contribute to barriers for American companies doing business in Europe. It will be more difficult. On my YouTube channel, you can see there is a video, and Larry Fink talks about how the global economy became isolated and put in silos, that in every country you go, you need to be presenting yourself like if you are local. So if you're doing business in Italy, you should look like Italian company. So it's not just US companies trying to do business in Europe. It's actually across the borders, even within Europe. Even if you're a French company in Germany, you still need to be working as a German company. You need to look as a German. So that's the dynamic for next couple of years we're going to see. And I don't agree with the statement that this is more to do with Trump. I think we need to remember that Trump is elected official. So he was elected by majority of population. So his narrative was picked up by majority of population. So we can say that this is sentiment in United States, at least. This is what the feeling of people and a vision how the economy should develop. And we also see rise of similar narrative in European countries. So we probably will see similar trends after elections in European countries, in Germany, in Eastern Europe, in France. Countries will try to isolate their economies as much as possible. They will try to give favors to the local businesses, and it will be harder for global businesses. And as I mentioned before, that majority of private equity firms are actually American. So to some extent, we might see that it will be harder for American companies to do business in Europe. But let's see how that goes. Another understanding of this chart could be that the European economy does not actually offer interesting investment opportunities in terms of private equity. We know that US stock exchange is largest, and there's a lot of activity going on. We also see innovation in terms of AI, in terms of companies that are bringing AI products or solutions. And we don't see some of this activity in Europe yet. So it could be that this decline right here, let me pick a different color. So it's quite possible that when we're talking about this period of time, that this kind of slowdown is driven by lack of investment opportunities. Let's see how this develops. It definitely looks interesting, and there are different readings of this chart.